But there was a guy one time that I saw on, and he was a cryptozoologist, and his area, his field was Bigfoot. And the guy was going on and on about this is their social structure, and this is, you know, how many children and offspring that they have, and how long it takes to raise them, and what do they do in their family structures, and how, I mean, just the detail was unbelievable. And I remember when I was watching it thinking, dude, do you think it's important to establish whether or not they exist before we get into, you know, this much depth about what you think about what they do? Like, it seemed a little bit weird, like putting the cart before the horse.
Right.
And while I can see the point to putting out a book that might be a thick book about, here's everything that's ever been claimed about Bigfoot. Here's like pictures of the plaster casts that people have claimed are, you know, left by tracks. Here's a picture of some hair that nobody was able to establish what animal this was from. Here's some photographs that were taken that are, we don't really know what this is a photo of. This is the picture, you know, the videotape that somebody said they caught. And you end up with a bunch of things that are basically claims and pieces of evidence that people are putting forward to say, this is what makes me think that I think there's something out there. This is what makes me believe there's something out there. Well, to put together a book like that, I think, is a reasonable endeavor. To put together a book talking about the social systems and the family structures, and then you're getting a little crazy, because until you can establish the thing exists, those types of questions or that type of information is not available except through examination.
Right.
So until you can examine Bigfoot family structures by looking at how they actually rear their young, then you really can't say. All you could really say is, well, if the claims are true and if the images are not faked, it appears this thing might be a great ape. And if that's the case, most great apes have a family structure like this. And you can make that kind of extrapolation, and it's still sort of an imaginary extrapolation. It might be somewhat reasonable if you're saying that, okay, if it exists and if it's a great ape, many great apes behave like this. But to talk about it in terms of detail of information when the thing is not examinable,
right,
when it's not available to examine, is unreasonable.
And by the way, something that would qualify as observational evidence isn't necessarily we've got to locate Bigfoot's big feet and watch them and observe their social structure. But like social anthropologists do this as well. If we found, even with no Bigfoot creatures, a former camp of theirs where we could tell things about what their social structure was, that's still observable evidence that goes toward that. And you know, in the case of Bigfoot, obviously, we don't have that, and so it is absurd to try and write this dissertation on, you know, Bigfoot family structures.
Right. So when I was talking last time about the idea of how can there be information if we say that we can't know that it exists,
right,
I didn't mean that you can't examine whatever is put forward as information, but it can't really be called information about thing X if we don't even know there is a thing X. It can only be put forward as this is claimed to be information about this thing. But we can't really call it information about the thing if we don't know there is a thing.
Right.
And that was my only point.
Which you know, in relating to the God question, which we talked about, that's why this God label that people put on things can mean almost anything to anybody, which makes it essentially meaningless to everyone. It has no value, no truth value, no kind of examinable characteristics.